The Essential Education projector range from Hitachi sponsors ICT programs.
Hello and welcome to a Resource Review ICT special. Do your primary history resources belong in a museum? Well, today we're looking at 3 ICT teaching aids that will bring you into the 21st century. A digitext that features the life of an extraordinary sportsman. A website that charts the lives of 10 historical characters. And a create your own local history website. Recommending today's resources is Dr. Grant Bage, Director of Learning at NESTA and a member of the Historical Association's Primary Committee. Welcome, Grant. On the panel today we have Colin Hinson, a freelance educational writer, and teacher Tony Hopkins from Midhurst Intermediate School in West Sussex. And our resident ICT investigator Matthew Tosh will be checking out the resources in his test lab. Well, Grant, let's begin with your first choice of resource. It's the digitext. Tell us about it.
Well, a digitext is basically a screen-based book, and this one's called Fields of Glory. Fields of Glory is the fact that Walter Tull was a black Englishman, and he's really famous for 2 things. The first is being a footballer, and he became a top amateur player and then a professional player.
What time period are we talking about?
We're talking about just before the First World War, effectively. And then the second bit of the Fields of Glory is that Walter volunteered to go and fight in the First World War, did that in a very distinguished way, worked his way up through the ranks, became the first black officer in the English British Army, and then was tragically killed in 1918 at the Second Battle of the Somme.
What a story, though. So what is it about this digitext that you particularly like as a teaching resource?
Well, I think the fact that it's got this incredibly rich content that's otherwise really quite difficult to access, but also as a teaching resource, it's got an imaginary diary where Walter speaks to you directly, and that's quite engaging. But it's got lots of historical materials that back that up, you know, postcards and letters and photos.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Let's kick off with Matthew's first report from the test lab, and he had a closer look at Fields of Glory.
This resource is a kind of digital textbooks where pupils can navigate through text and images at their own pace quite easily on the computer screen. And in this textbook here, we're going to be looking at the diary and letters of Walter Tull. Now, as you can see, the layout of the screen is quite straightforward. You've got the main body of the text in the middle, and at the bottom there's a timeline which shows you where the particular bit of text fits in chronologically. On different parts of the timeline you can access letters as well, just by clicking on the left-hand side like so. It gives you the letters that Walter wrote and had sent to him. Some of the screens have supporting images, and these images can be enlarged like so. We can see a picture here of the Spurs football team. We've also got access to little extra snippets of information. Some of these are football based and some are non-football based. If you want the football ones, you click on the football like that, and here we can see Walter's goals for Spurs at that time. And in addition to all these, we've got access to newspaper clippings, and wait for this, even movie footage, like this one here.
This is a match between Arsenal and Newcastle. It was held in 1919, probably at Arsenal's football ground at Highbury.
Now that piece of film footage came from the early 1900s, which I think is absolutely incredible to have access to. Now there are some words on the resource which are underlined in blue, giving you access to a rather limited vocabulary page, a little glossary going on here. And some of the words, if you click on them, are pronounced just like that to help pupils with their reading. At the very bottom of the screen there is access to a toolbar which gives you a bookmarking facility so you can mark pages of interest, and there's a neat little feature here, this notepad. It's a digital exercise book in effect. You can have up to 11 pages of notes, and there's even a bookmarking facility here. Now this is linked to a pupil-specific login, and there are even teacher logins as well. So if you're logged in as a teacher, what it means is you can access individual pupil notes, and this could be good for marking homework. Well, that's the end of our resource, the Fields of Glory. I'll hand you back to Hermione.
Great story. But who do you think it's really aimed at?
It's got a really specific target audience, which is Year 6, and that's for English in particular, because they have to do, children have to do autobiography and biography and letters and diaries. in that year. So it's aimed specifically there. And if we look at this letter here, we've got basically Walter's sister is saying congratulations on his promotion and he's going to be a second lieutenant. And then we've got Walter saying I'm going to be home on leave on Boxing Day and he's going to be reporting soon to begin training for his commission. And then on the 10th of December, there's his brother who's saying, we're so excited about the fact that you're going to become, you know, one of the first black officers in the British Army. Now, those are real letters, and it's very important that for Year 6 children, they engage with that.
OK, well, thank you very much. Now, Tony, as a teacher who you've actually worked with this resource in your classroom, how did you find it?
I found it an excellent resource. I mean, the key for me was the way the pupils looked at it and adapted to it and liked it. I think it's a super story, and it may not be correct to say so, but it is going to appeal to the boys. I think it has a lot of use in a wider context in schools, which just to be mentioned in PHSE, I can see it being used. I did talk briefly to an English colleague, and they do this sort of work within the English department because I couldn't justify buying it in my own history department because of the cost. But I think it's got a lot of potential for schools. OK,
well, let's see what Colin thinks as well. Colin, your thoughts?
Well, I thought it was a terrific resource, particularly for lower ability pupils. And I felt that because history is a subject where you need to have a personal engagement with it, there needs to be a reason for studying history. And for some pupils, football is that way in. So they make that football and history link, makes it much easier to teach. I thought it was a great resource.
I'm afraid we've got to move on now to Grant's second choice of resource. Now, the only negative point on that one was it was a little bit expensive, but your second one is completely free.
It's a BBC website. Now, with the BBC, any BBC website, any BBC resource, it comes with that assurance of quality, really.
And what is this particular website?
It's a website aimed at 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And it's picked 10 famous people from across the world, people like, you know, Pocahontas and Christopher Columbus and Henry VIII, and it's really their life stories and some activities around them. But it's very simple, and that's what I like about this site. It's free, it's safe, and it's extremely simple.
Well, before we discuss it any further, let's return to Matthew in the test lab, and he put BBC Schools' famous people through its paces.
There are two versions of the BBC Famous People website. There's a flash version and a non-flash version. Whilst both versions have the same content, the flash one is much richer in media content and audio support. And it's the flash version we're going to have a look at today.
Click on one of the icons to begin.
Now, if you're using this resource on an interactive whiteboard with a whole class, you probably want to switch the sound off, and this can be done by clicking on the audio off button. Now, there are a total of 10 people that you can look at on this website, and we're going to have a look at Brunel. Now, all of the sections for each famous person are the same layout, and you can see here we've got an introductory screen, and we're going to go and have a look at the Learn section. OK, so you can see the screen is quite clearly set out. There's not much text there, and it's very easy to read. Some of the screens have extra information, like the area in green on here, which is clickable. Now, once you've done the Learn About section, you can go and have a go at some activities. There's one down here, it's a train game. And the game here allows me to build a railway. And I literally drag on little bits of railway track like so to make a railway track. At all points throughout the website, there is access to a help screen for the pupils at the top right-hand corner. And there's even a teacher's help section in the top left-hand corner. Back on the main page, there is access to teacher support materials and even some printable worksheets for the pupils to write on, like this one here for Edward Jenner. Well, that's it for the Famous People website. I'll hand you back to our panel.
Well, Matthew showed us a lot of the resource there. It struck me that perhaps there isn't that much more to it. It's quite a basic resource.
It is, and that's why I chose it. I mean, effectively it's free, and also it's very simple, which means that very young children can use it independently. And it's fair to say, I think, that some of the resources on there are, you know, variable. I mean, this is the story of Pocahontas, who, of course, is another amazing story, really.
Well, let's see what the panel think. Tony, how did your pupils respond?
They liked certain aspects of it, but the general view was that they'd like it a bit more challenging.
Right,
and
it was
I
just
used
too simple
it with,
for them.
although my school only has Year 6, I did have some younger children in having a little look at it. The best thing I liked about it was when one of the pupils said to me, I didn't read that question properly, and I must read the question properly, which I thought was rather nice, because they were doing it too quickly and made a mistake.
Right, so they thought it was simple enough for them to whiz through it.
Yeah. But I
actually-
think the general view was that some of the games were a bit simple and not challenging enough.
Colin, I know you want to say something about games.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on that. I mean, it's clearly some of the games on there do have an educational, remit, and you can see what the purpose of it is. But some of the other games, I didn't see the point.
The one
from a
that
learning
Matthew was
point of
showing
view.
us,
Yeah,
the
like
railway
train
track.
game, or dressing Henry VIII in his armour, or something like that. I showed those games to actually some preschool children, 3 and 4-year-olds, who had no problem with it whatsoever. And so, if it's not challenging them, then it certainly won't challenge Key Stage 1 pupils.
And I think that's the point of it, is that for 5, 6, 7-year-olds, it's actually guaranteed to be independent. So it's going to be easy for some, and it's variable. The backup information for teachers on the historical figures themselves is strong, and I think that's where some of the challenge can come in.
Okay, well, thank you. Now it's time to move on to Grant's third choice of resource.
This is a website, and it's called What Was in Walton, and it's going to actually be a national website called whatwashere.com. Now, the idea of it is that you collect local stories, and I say you, it can be adults, it can be children, so it's open to the whole community, and you post your stories on the website. So it's like a map with lots of stories of a locality, and it's not just stories, there are also pictures. So, for instance, this is a picture just coming up from the local photographic archive, which shows refuse collection from 1908, and that's a dust cart like no other dust cart. And it's basically a way of trying to harness and concentrate people's memories.
How are teachers going to use this?
At Key Stage 2, all children have to do some local history, and doing a local history inquiry or topic is great fun, but actually sometimes it's really good to have some models of what other people have done.
Yeah.
So even if you're not going to produce a website like this in your classroom, actually to see what somebody else has done, and the sort of richness of stories and objects that go across the centuries, because you can browse by century on this.
Right,
is a
okay.
really good example.
Well, it sounds good in theory. What do the panel think? Tony, is this something that you can see working in your classroom?
I can see it being a tremendous resource. I think it'll take time to set up.
Yes,
And
it's not quite
you've got
there
to do
yet.
it very much in your own locality. What I think something like this will do is give people ideas of what to put on their own resource.
Okay, Colin, your thoughts?
I love the interactivity of this, and one of the two things I really liked about this is, first of all, it's about intergenerational learning, but also it gives the opportunity for younger people, the pupils, to actually input their own memories as well, although they're briefer memories, obviously.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's a valid thing that their memories are there as well. So what it means is that pupils are becoming producers as well as consumers of history.
Okay, well, I'm really sorry, that's all we've got time for today. 3 excellent resources, thank you very much, Grant. To recap, they were Fields of Glory, the diary of Walter Tull from Longman Digitexts, BBC Schools Famous People website from the BBC, and whatwasinwalton.com from www.whatwashere.com. For information about the resources that we've discussed today, go to our website. It's teachers.tv/resource review, or email us resourcereview@teachers.tv. Thank you very much to our panel, to Grant, to Colin and to Tony. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.
Essential education projectors from Hitachi sponsor ICT programs.